Okay. I guess I'll bite. Let's talk about this article that was published on Boston Hockey Now that proposes some pretty interesting Boston Bruins trade ideas that I think a lot of people are gonna find pretty funny, particularly Bruins fans, as well as maybe the few Toronto Maple Leafs fans that go out there and scour the internet looking for hockey news. So this is our conversation we're having today. Should the Boston Bruins target these available players on the NHL trade market? Published a few days ago by Jimmy Murphy. Go ahead and read this article. The link will be in the description. Go ahead and do that. So, this article is pretty much self-explanatory when it comes to what it goes over, talking about guys on the NHL trade market and talking about whether or not the Bruins should trade for them. Murphy does a good job in going over different names and analyzing their situations, but when it comes to the name we're talking about today, yeah, there's a reason why I said this is a funny one. Let's talk today about Arizona Coyotes forward Phil Kessel, who is a name we have discussed in the past. We have made ourselves a few videos talking about Phil Kessel and where exactly the next stages of his career are going to transpire, because when it comes to Phil the Thrill, Hot Dog, Trucker Kessel, there is a very big meme status that has established itself over the past half-decade for this player, pretty much because at his core, Phil Kessel is a very good hockey player who has some really, really interesting moments. Media interviews, tweets, USA, snubs, and all that stuff. There is a big body of work that Phil Kessel has accomplished, both in terms of the media and in terms of on-ice gameplay, and NHL fans kind of love him for it, because Phil Kessel just doesn't really care what you think, and he's gonna go out there, score 20 goals, have his cake, or not really his cake, but he'll have his hot dog, he'll leave, and he'll laugh out the door while doing so. Kessel is an Arizona Coyote, and he's been in a position where this season he hasn't really been doing all too well, comparative to what we know he is capable of. He was a 90-point player, point-per-game player, with the Pittsburgh Penguins when they were winning Stanley Cups. Ever since, though, getting traded to Arizona in the Alex Galchenyuk trade? Yeah, there were a few Alex Galchenyuk trades, but he got sent over to Arizona, had a pretty decent season, but not really all too much of a great one for his standards in 2019-20. 2020-2021, though, was a much better year, under a point per game there, 20 goals, 56 games played. This season, though, he has kind of struggled, 21 points in 30 games. Everybody in Arizona has kind of struggled, though, because that team is just pretty bad. So let's go over what exactly Murphy is writing about when it comes to Phil the Thrill. Can you say a full circle or maybe deja vu? Yes, you read that right. The hot dog king of the NHL, see, this is kind of what I mean, right? Meme status, he is an absolute meme lord. The hot dog king of the NHL could, and in the eyes of this puck scribe, should be a potential NHL trade target for the Boston Bruins. Coyotes GM Bill Armstrong is apparently begging teams to acquire the 34-year-old Kessel for draft picks as he continues to stockpile picks for the 22 and 23 drafts. In fact, according to numerous sources, Armstrong would even eat parts of what remains of the final $8 million cap hit from Kessel's contract if the Bruins can somehow grant Jake DeBrusk trade request despite all he continues to do is decrease his trade value. Could Kessel replace him in the middle six forward group and become that scoring threat they so desperately need there? Now, what exactly does this mean? The middle six for the Boston Bruins is not really the best right now. In fact, the reputation for this team is that they are a one-line team, because all that seems to get done on the Boston Bruins is scoring by Bergeron, Pasternak, Marchand, when these guys are, of course, all in the lineup. But the rest of the lineup has really kind of fallen off. The next best forwards on the team when it comes to point production: Charlie Coyle, 14 points, 26 games. Taylor Hall, 14 points, 26 games. Then you have DeBrusk, Smith, and then Curtis Lazar down there with 8, 7, and 5 points. This team is not really getting all too much production outside the top of their lineup. Charlie Coyle just is not that second-line center to replace David Krejci like you really would have wanted him to be. Taylor Hall, unfortunately, even though he does have a pretty okay amount of points, has not really shown off the same level of lethality that he has in the past. And, I mean, he has himself that $6 million AAV contract for the next few years. He was really good with Boston towards the end of the 2021 season. But this year hasn't really been the best. Now you take a look at what exactly this Phil Kessel idea is. Bruins forward Jake DeBrusk is the name that Murphy is proposing could be a trade candidate. Now, DeBrusk is another name we have discussed a ton about in the past few months, too. 25 years old, 6 feet, 194. He absolutely has not developed in the way that Bruins fans would have wanted him to after getting a near 30-goal season in 2018-19 and being a top-tier draft pick in the 2015 draft. Everybody loves to point their fingers, me especially, at the players that the Bruins missed out on when they drafted Zaboral, Senyshyn, and DeBrusk, but aside from that, though, Jake DeBrusk right now is a hard-working middle six caliber forward who goes out there, makes his own work. He has some skill, he has some physicality. It just really hasn't worked out for him this season as a member of the third line, behind Marchand and behind Taylor Hall on this team. Now, whether or not the Arizona Coyotes would actually be interested in taking on a DeBrusk is up in the air, because the Coyotes have traded away guys who are in similar age ranges already, and they've been in discussions of trading away even more. Jake Chicharron is on the Arizona Coyotes, and he was a 2016 guy. He's all over the trade market sphere. They traded away Connor Garland, who, even though he was drafted as an overager back in that time frame, was in that same age range. Now, you still have some other guys that are in that same age range, or just a tad younger. Clayton Keller comes to mind. You have Lawson Krause, Matthias Michelli, and Barrett Hayton are some of the younger guys on this team. So there are indeed some younger pieces, but what the Arizona Coyotes really are looking for is more draft picks. I mean, this season in the 2022 draft, they have, 7 picks in the top 2 rounds? And nothing says that they're going to go out there and try to stop at that number, especially with Chicharron and Kessel on the trade block. So, with Arizona being the team that they are, if you're Boston and you're insisting to the Coyotes, hey, take Jake DeBrusk, take this guy, we want to give you him, and we want this Kessel guy in return. You guys want to give him up? Here you go, it's a nice young forward. Do you think the Arizona Coyotes ask for a second as well, or a second and a third as well, or maybe even a first as well? Because the Boston Bruins, you take a look at what they have right now in their system. They have their first, they have their second, they have Calgary's third. Do they really want to go out there and pay a premium of a first and a second, or a second and a third, with a Jake DeBrusk for a 34-year-old Phil Kessel? Now, I get it. Kessel is good, and I get it, Kessel has that history, but I don't really know if that's the right move to go about things into the next few seasons, because it would really just be an all-or-nothing kind of move. The Boston Bruins are kind of on that expiring window of opportunity closing time frame now, because guys are getting older. Patrice Bergeron is now 36 years old. Tuukka Rask is out here. We don't know the future of this guy on the team. You have yourselves a rest of your team that is not really picking up the pace and carrying over what should be good production and good gameplay. Phil Kessel adds to your age problem. A Phil Kessel trade would be sacrificing parts of the future, whether or not that's a draft pick and DeBrusk or whatever, for a one more opportunity shot at going for a Stanley Cup again. You could debate that this Bruins team is a lot worse off now than they were when they lost in 2019. You could debate that they're a lot worse now than last year when they lost to the Islanders, or 2 years ago when they lost to the Lightning. A trade for Phil Kessel would be all or nothing, but would it really be enough? That's kind of what I'm trying to get at here. Now, if a Kessel trade does go down that way, you acquire this guy, you trade away DeBrusk, maybe you trade away another player or something too, just to make the salary work out, because Kessel does make $6.8 million. If there's salary retained, you don't have to think about that though. If Phil Kessel goes out to Boston and he revitalizes Taylor Hall's career, then this could be a really, really good acquisition. If you can get Charlie Coyle moving as a second-line center, if you could get Taylor Hall going again, and you get Phil Kessel back to the standard he was at last season, all of a sudden the Bruins are not a two-line team anymore. All of a sudden there's a lot more depth throughout the lineup when it comes to scoring, when it comes to power play, when it comes to this and that and everything, and it would ultimately be a really good win, except that's not guaranteed. I love Phil Kessel as much as the next guy and would be really, really intrigued to see him return to Boston where he was drafted all those years ago, but is 34-year-old Phil Kessel the answer for the Boston Bruins today in 2021, where they are aging out, where guys are probably going to be leaving sooner rather than later, and when they're somewhat worse off than they were last year when they were getting eliminated in the second round? Talk to me in the comments on your thoughts about this idea over here. Kessel for DeBrusk, or Kessel for DeBrusk and other stuff. already kind of talked about the Arizona thing, so I don't really think that we need to go out there and do that even more. But let me know in the comments all your thoughts about this idea. Would you like to see Phil the Thrill return to Boston? The article on Boston Hockey Now says one little part at the end that I thought was funny. Imagine the irony of the Bruins acquiring Kessel, whom they traded during the 2006 NHL Draft weekend, and re-signing goalie Tuukka Rask, whom they acquired from the Leafs in that same draft. Let me know in the comments all your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this Visuals 99. And bye.